The council chamber was never meant to echo. Every surface of Velith Prime's grand hall, polished crystal, atmospheric dampeners, layers of resonant shielding, was designed to absorb sound, to turn words into whispers before they could become weapons. But today, even that ancient architecture couldn't contain the uproar. The voices of 100 species collided in chaos, a storm of disbelief that rolled across the amphitheater like thunder in a sealed sky. High Chancellor Zreth Dahl stood at the central dais, his 4 eyes glimmering beneath the soft haze of the chamber lights. He had presided over war declarations, planetary annexations, even genocidal pleas dressed as diplomacy. But he had never presided over fear. Not like this. Not from his own council. Silence, he demanded, his voice layered with the resonance field that amplified authority. The roar subsided, unevenly. You will speak one at a time. Admiral Kurnis, your report began this session. Continue. The insectoid admiral unfolded her limbs with mechanical precision. Her mandibles clicked once, a sound of restraint. At 0200 Standard Galactic Time, Sector 17 ceased all transmission. 6 worlds, gone. At first, we suspected a relay failure. But before diagnostics could confirm, we received this. She gestured, and the holographic feed blinked to life above the dais. The chamber dimmed. A grainy recording appeared, flickers of a vast black void, the camera shaking as if under magnetic assault. Then, out of the nothingness, shapes emerged. Sharp, angular hulls without energy signatures, their forms dark enough to drink starlight. They moved with uncanny precision, darting through sensor interference like phantoms. Unknown vessels, Kurnis said. They entered the system without warp trails, bypassed our sentry grid, and neutralized planetary defenses in less than 7 minutes. Then they transmitted this message, one phrase, translated automatically through our standard linguistic core. She tapped the console. A voice, human in tone, calm and direct, filled the chamber. This is not an invasion. This is acknowledgement. The playback ended. Silence followed. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the life support regulators cycling air through the vast dome. Then the murmurs began again, small, nervous, desperate. Humans. Impossible. They don't possess deep core warp technology. It must be a mimic species. Fabricated signals. Zreth exhaled slowly. Admiral, confirm origin of transmission. Confirmed, Chancellor. The linguistic route traces directly to Sol. Phonetic structure and accent match Terran Standard, Earth English, Mid-Continental variant. Source verified through Council archives. The chamber erupted again. Representatives shouted over one another, their translator drones struggling to maintain coherence. Some called for immediate retaliation, others for investigation, and a few whispered the unthinkable, that humanity, the discarded species of the Outer Rim, had struck first. Order, Zreth thundered, slamming his clawed hand against the control sphere. The resonance field surged, silencing the room. We will not descend into superstition. No species advances beyond known physics without detection. If these are humans, then they have help. Find it. From the upper tiers, a thin, avian delegate leaned forward, feathers quivering. Chancellor, perhaps we should consider the alternative. Reports indicate these attacks are not random. The targets, frontier strongholds, trade hubs, refueling depots, align precisely with our former blockade lines during the Terran exclusion. The words hung in the air like a blade. The exclusion. The decision centuries ago to deny Earth membership, to quarantine its expansion, to label humanity a developing species unfit for galactic diplomacy. The policy that had humiliated them. Coincidence, Zreth said flatly. Or manipulation. But the tone lacked conviction. A new feed flickered into existence, overriding all others. The chamber systems dimmed again, unbidden. Panic rippled through the delegates as the image resolved. not an official broadcast, not a council-sanctioned stream. A human face filled the air. Female, sharp-eyed, expression unreadable. "This is Admiral Cassandra Vale of the Terran Vanguard Fleet," the voice said. "To the Galactic Council of Velith Prime, we come not in conquest, but in correction. You dismissed us. You mocked us. You erased us from your registries. Yet you built your borders from the stars we reached first. That era ends today." Static engulfed the transmission before it could finish. "Trace that signal." Sreth barked. "Already done," one of the aides stammered. "But, the origin doesn't exist. It's in gravitational drift, between mapped coordinates." "Meaning?" "Meaning nowhere, Chancellor. Or everywhere." Sreth turned his gaze toward the hologram's lingering shadow. "If this is real, we are facing an enemy that moves outside known spacetime navigation." He paused, his voice lowering. "A species that learned the rules of the galaxy, only to rewrite them." A quiet unease spread through the chamber. For the first time in recorded memory, the Galactic Council felt small. From the observation tiers above, a council historian whispered into her recorder, voice trembling as she documented the event for posterity. "First contact, redefined. The Terrans return to the stage." And the council gasps in disbelief. Outside the chamber, beyond the shimmering energy walls, the vast atmosphere of Velith Prime glowed with incoming traffic, envoys, analysts, warships gathering in orbit. Somewhere beyond that swirling chaos, past the edge of mapped space, the fleets of Earth moved unseen through the dark, closing in on the galaxy that had once denied their existence. Sreth looked down at the council insignia embedded in the dais. The ancient crest of unity had weathered countless storms. Yet now, for the first time, he wondered if it could survive one species' vengeance. "Admiral Kurnus," he said quietly. "Summon the Defense Directorate. Prepare for the possibility that the impossible has already arrived." Kurnus inclined her head, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the dim light like shards of fractured glass. "Understood, Chancellor. But I must ask, what if their intent isn't conquest?" Sreth hesitated. "Then I fear that would be worse. For conquest, at least, we understand." And as the chamber lights rose once more, every delegate knew the age of certainty had ended. The humans had not asked for a place among the stars, they had taken it, unseen and undeniable. The holodisplay burned like a wound in the air. It hovered over the central platform of the War Observatory, painting pale light across the ring of gathered commanders. Sreth Dal stood in the center, surrounded by figures of every imaginable biology, chitin and metal, scales and vapor. But none of them looked at him. Every gaze was fixed on the image that flickered before them, a dead system still drifting in the void, its star reduced to silence, its stations nothing but ash. "Play it again," Sreth said. His voice cracked the air like glass. The analyst obeyed. The recording began anew, taken from a council observation probe moments before its destruction. The stars swayed, the camera tilted, and then there they were again, ships emerging from darkness, sleek and black, edges lit faintly by the dying light of the system's sun. No warp flare. No jump distortion. Just appearance, as if reality itself had been peeled back to let them through. Each ship bore no crest, no signal, no identifier. Yet their design was unmistakable to anyone who had ever studied pre-FTL records of Earth's orbital craft. The same brutal efficiency of geometry. The same deliberate absence of ornament. Human. "They use stealth shielding beyond anything we've modeled," Admiral Kurnus said. "They've masked all energy output. Thermal, magnetic, even neutrino trails. That's not possible without violating energy conservation." "They've violated a great many things," muttered another delegate. The playback continued. Planetary defense grids fired, dozens of beams slicing through the void, each missing by impossible precision. The human ships moved like water, weaving through trajectories that no targeting AI could predict. Then, in absolute silence, the station's power signatures collapsed one by one. The last image was the human fleet aligning over the main colony world, their shadows blotting out the light. Then static. The feed ended. The room remained dark. How many casualties? Sreth asked. 3 million, Kurnis said softly. Non-combatants, industrial personnel, families. The planetary core was destabilized. The crust folded inward. A low hiss filled the air as one of the aquatic envoys expelled water through his gills, a sign of disbelief. They annihilated a world. For what? Not annihilated, Kurnis corrected. Erased. Their comm array was wiped before impact. No debris fields remain. They left nothing for us to trace. A long silence fell. Even the hum of the observatory's stabilizers seemed muted. Sreth felt the cold weight of realization pressing against his thoughts. This was not random violence. It was message. Chancellor, came a thin voice from the intelligence dais. We've recovered a second transmission. It arrived through an encrypted channel not of Council origin. Sreth gestured for playback. The image sharpened, and once again a human appeared, this time a man, middle-aged, with sharp eyes and a faint smile that didn't reach them. I am Director Alon Reyes, he said. Chief Architect of the Quantum Relay Network. You've likely detected fragments of our movement across what you call impossible space. I assure you, it is quite possible. You simply never looked in the right direction. He paused, as though waiting for the council to absorb his words. For centuries, you measured power by what could be seen, empires, fleets, monuments. You built your dominion on visibility, on presence. We built ours on the unseen. The dark between your stars belongs to us now. Every blind coordinate, every gravitational shadow, every uncharted fragment of the void. We are not hiding from you. We are moving where you cannot follow. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a trace of static that lingered like smoke. Kurnis turned towards Sreth. That's the same man who led Earth's petition for council membership. He was dismissed from the chamber 214 cycles ago. I remember him, Sreth said. He warned us this would happen. A murmur spread around the room. One of the smaller delegates, its body no more than a cluster of bioluminescent spores, pulsed with agitation. This cannot be allowed to stand. A pre-class species using technology beyond Class 9 restrictions, this is a violation of the Stability Accord. Then enforce it, another growled. You have fleets. Hunt them. And where, exactly, shall we look? Kurnis snapped. They move in dark space. Even our deep core sensors fail there. If we send fleets blindly, we'll lose them before they ever see an enemy. The council chamber began to fracture again, voices rising, blame shifting. Sreth raised a hand but did not call for silence. He let the chaos swell. He wanted to feel it, the panic he had once considered impossible. The galaxy's greatest power, paralyzed by ghosts from a blue planet no one had cared to remember. Finally, he spoke. They are not ghosts. They are consequences. The words stilled the room. He turned toward the central display, where the frozen image of the human fleet still lingered, rows of black ships gleaming faintly against the scattered stars. For too long we dismissed the unpredictable. We labeled it primitive. Yet that unpredictability is their weapon. They were forged in conflict. Their history is a chain of self-inflicted disasters. To them, survival is not instinct, it is strategy. Admiral Kurnis tilted her head. You believe they intend full war? No, Sreth said slowly. War requires parity. This feels like demonstration. They're showing us what they've become. A soft chime broke the tension. A messenger drone descended, projecting a priority alert. The hologram shifted again, this time, not destruction, but a map. Dozens of red points pulsed across the galactic rim, expanding inward toward core space. Incursions, the analyst whispered. Multiple simultaneous breaches, no warp readings, no fleet IDs. All identical patterns. Kurnis stared at the map. How many? 38 confirmed. Possibly more. The room went utterly still. Zreth felt something he hadn't in centuries, a spark of cold beneath his carapace that even the chamber's warmth couldn't touch. He had commanded the Council's forces through countless uprisings, faced annihilation-level events, but never like this. Never without a face to point at. Prepare emergency contact with all high sectors, he ordered. Seal non-essential warp corridors. Activate black protocols. As aides hurried to obey, Kurnis spoke quietly. And if they reach the core? Zreth turned his eyes toward the hologram, where red marks were spreading like infection toward Velith Prime. Then we will learn, he said, what humanity truly means when they speak of acknowledgement. Outside, through the observatory's transparent dome, the swirling clouds of the gas giant glimmered with reflected light from distant stars. Among them, faint shadows drifted, unregistered objects, small, silent, and closing in. No alarm sounded. The Council's sensors saw nothing. And so, in the heart of the galaxy's oldest power, the second act of humanity's quiet arrival began, unseen, unstoppable, inevitable. The corridors of the Council Defense Directorate vibrated with noise. Footsteps, alarms, voices rising in languages colliding across species. Every holoscreen flashed with crimson alerts. Fleet positions, broken communications, systems lost to silence. The galaxy was unraveling, and Velith Prime could only watch. Admiral Kurnis strode through the chaos, her limbs clicking in sharp rhythm. Drones scattered to make way as she entered the central command chamber. High Chancellor Zreth was already there, surrounded by holographic projections that painted him in shifting colors of disaster. Entire sectors blinked red, their designations fading one by one. Report, Zreth said without looking up. Confirmed incursions across 5 major trade arteries, Kurnis answered. Every attack follows the same pattern, zero detection until impact, rapid neutralization, then complete signal blackout. They're not seizing territory, they're dismantling infrastructure. We're losing communication before we can respond. A technician nearby spoke up, his voice trembling. Sir, new feed from the Ardent Reach front. Admiral Talvek's fleet engaged unidentified ships near the border. He's transmitting live. Put it through, Zreth ordered. The feed materialized in the center of the chamber. A massive reptilian officer filled the frame, scales glistening under red emergency light. This is Talvek of the 4th Armada, he shouted over the roar of alarms. We've made visual contact, confirming Terran hulls. Repeat, Terran hulls. There. The signal fractured. For a moment, the transmission filled with static, then with the image of something vast moving behind the Admiral's bridge, something sleek, predatory, and silent. Before anyone could speak, the feed went black. The chamber froze. Kurnis' mandibles twitched. That was less than 4 minutes of engagement. An entire armada, gone. Zreth's upper eyes closed. They're testing us. Measuring response time. They don't need to test, Kurnis said. They already know. The Chancellor turned toward the central console. Activate Shadow Protocol. Pull all fleets back to defensive positions around the core. Shut down long-range beacons. If they're using our communication lattice to track us, we cut the lattice entirely. Cutting the lattice means blinding the outer systems, one of the aides objected. Then they'll learn to see in the dark, Zreth snapped. The room fell into motion, officers rushing to relay orders through secure physical channels. No one trusted digital transmission anymore, human code had been found embedded in the Council's systems like veins of infection. Kurnis turned back toward the map hovering in midair. The human incursions weren't spreading like invasion lines. They were circles, each one expanding, overlapping, converging toward the galactic center. "They're not attacking us randomly," she murmured. "They're drawing us inward." Sreth looked up. "A trap? Or an invitation," she said. The Chancellor's gaze hardened. "Not yet. They want a reaction. They want fear. We will not give them either." Another alarm pulsed through the air. "New contact, deep space intercept, 2 light days from Velith Prime." The chamber dimmed as an external visual replaced the star chart. The image was faint, distorted by gravitational interference, but clear enough to show what no one wanted to see: a Terran vessel, larger than any Council warship, its hull reflecting nothing, its movement impossibly smooth. It was descending slowly into the core sectors, straight toward the capital. "Time to arrival?" Sreth asked. 3 standard hours, came the reply. Kurnis stared at the projection. "They're announcing themselves." The Chancellor's expression didn't change. "Prepare planetary defense grids. I want every gun trained on that vector. No warnings. No diplomacy. Chancellor. Do it." Kurnis gave the order, and the command rippled outward. Across Velith Prime's orbit, thousands of automated defense platforms came online, each one locking onto the intruding ship's path. The air in the chamber grew heavy, thick with anticipation. Then the feed flickered. The Terran vessel vanished. Every targeting system blinked red. No contact. No trace. The room filled with overlapping shouts as technicians scrambled to recalibrate. "They're gone," someone said. "They just disappeared." "Impossible," Kurnis hissed. "No ship can vanish inside our own detection field." "Unless," Sreth murmured, "they were already inside it." As if in answer, every display in the chamber went black. The emergency lights dimmed. The silence was suffocating. Then a single image appeared on the central screen, a human face, illuminated by the pale glow of distant stars. Admiral Cassandra Vale. Her voice was calm, the kind of calm that carried certainty. "Members of the Galactic Council. You built an empire of observation, yet you never looked inward. We have come to correct that oversight. Stand down your defenses. There will be no negotiations until you are ready to listen." Her gaze shifted, meeting Sreth's directly through the transmission feed. "You once told my people that ambition without permission is rebellion. You were right. This is rebellion." The transmission ended, the chamber lights flickering back to full brightness. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the planet's energy core far below. Finally, Kurnis broke the silence. "She didn't threaten us." "No," Sreth said. "She didn't have to." Outside the observatory dome, the skies over Velith Prime glowed faintly as planetary defenses remained on alert. But above the highest layers of atmosphere, unseen to sensors, hundreds of small dark shapes drifted silently, human drones, their hulls cold, their optics black, watching every pulse of the capital's defenses. In the command chamber, Sreth turned away from the view. "Begin immediate evacuation of non-essential council personnel. Lock down the core chambers. I want a secure line prepared for direct communication if they contact us again." Kurnis hesitated. "You intend to speak with them?" "I intend to understand what they want," he said. "Before they decide we're no longer worth talking to." She nodded, though her eyes never left the holographic map. The red circles of human incursion were closing tighter now, their pattern no longer chaotic but deliberate, elegant, like a web being drawn. Across the galaxy, panic rippled through the member worlds. Fleets abandoned posts. Colonies declared independence. Every system feared the same thing, that the humans would appear next. And far beyond the rim, hidden in the dark between the stars, the Terran fleets waited. Their silence was strategy, their invisibility the weapon of a species that had learned long ago that being ignored was the most powerful disguise of all. The dark side of the rogue planet was bathed in the dim, flickering light of nearby nebular storms. From orbit, it looked lifeless, just another dead rock adrift in the uncharted reaches beyond Council space. But beneath its surface, buried under kilometers of carbon shielding and magnetic distortion, an entire city pulsed with activity. The Terran Vanguard Command. Humanity's Shadow Heart. Admiral Cassandra Vale stood before a transparent operations wall, her reflection fractured by lines of tactical overlays and data streams. Every line, every number represented a world falling into silence. To the untrained eye, it was chaos. To her, it was music, precise, deliberate, necessary. Behind her, the steady hum of the war room blended with the faint rhythm of machinery. Human officers moved quietly between stations, their eyes lit by the cold glow of interface visors. No one raised their voice. No one questioned. In this room, orders were gravity. A soft chime announced the arrival of Director Alon Reyes. He approached with slow, measured steps, his posture more scholar than soldier. "You've accelerated Phase 3, he said, his tone neutral. "We weren't supposed to reveal the core fleets this early." Vale didn't look up. "The Council surveillance net is collapsing faster than expected. If we wait, they'll adapt. They still believe this is war." Reyes folded his hands behind his back. "And it isn't. It's memory," Vale said quietly. "They forgot us. We're just reminding them we were never gone." Reyes studied her reflection in the glass. "You sound almost nostalgic." "Maybe I am," she admitted. "There's a kind of poetry in this, isn't there? The galaxy that dismissed us as irrelevant now measures its days by our silence." He smiled faintly. "You always did enjoy making history bleed." She turned to face him then, eyes sharp, her expression unreadable. "History is written by those who survive the arrogance of others. I'm simply ensuring survival continues to be ours." The lights dimmed as new data poured across the wall, communications intercepts, fragmented distress signals from Council fleets, planetary surrender transmissions. Reyes stepped closer, scanning the lines. "Velith Prime has gone to full lockdown. They've pulled everything back to the core." "You predicted it." "They're predictable," she replied. "That's their weakness. They built a galaxy that runs on order. We built one that thrives in chaos." From the far end of the room, an aide approached, holding a secure tablet. "Admiral, message from the diplomatic sector. Envoy Tran requests authorization to initiate Phase 5. Vale accepted the tablet. Lyra Tran's calm face appeared on the screen. "Admiral," she said, her voice level, almost soothing. "They've opened partial communication channels. No direct contact yet, but they're listening. I recommend we proceed before they collapse back into panic." "Proceed," Vale said. "Deliver the statement. Nothing more." Lyra inclined her head. "Understood." "And the fleets?" Vale's gaze hardened. "Hold position. No aggression unless provoked. They'll understand soon enough." The feed ended. Silence filled the command room. Reyes stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're giving them room to breathe." "Not mercy," Vale said. "Context. The galaxy needs to see us not as conquerors, but as the inevitable result of their own arrogance. Fear is temporary. Respect lasts longer." He nodded slowly, though doubt flickered in his eyes. "You're playing a dangerous game, Cass. One miscalculation, and they'll unite. The last time they did that, it took us a century to rebuild." She returned her attention to the window, where holographic projections displayed the slow advance of Terran fleets through the galactic map, each formation moving through blank zones, untouched by known routes. "If they unite," she said, "it will already be too late. We've rewritten the map they'd use to find us." A faint tremor rippled through the chamber as one of the quantum relays activated somewhere deep below. The entire room shimmered for a moment, reality bending slightly before stabilizing again. Vale's officers continued their work as if nothing had happened. They were used to the impossible now. Reyes broke the silence. Do you ever wonder if we've gone too far? Vale's eyes lingered on the shifting map. You mean, did we become the monsters they imagined us to be? He hesitated. Something like that. She exhaled softly. If we have, it's because they taught us how. Every empire in that council was built on conquest. Every civilization out there learned survival through dominance. We just learned faster. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. And if they surrender? Then we offer them the one thing they never offered us, she said. Choice. The doors hissed open as a new officer entered, urgency in his stride. Admiral, Deep Space Array Sigma just detected a mass data burst from the Council's encrypted relay bands. Content unknown, but the signature matches pre-war diplomatic transmission format. Vale's eyes narrowed. They're trying to talk. Reyes arched a brow. That was faster than expected. Not fast enough, she murmured. They've already lost the initiative. She turned to the officer. Patch it to trans-channel. Full surveillance, no interference. If they're ready to speak, I want to see how much they've learned to listen. The officer saluted and departed. Vale stood in silence for several seconds, then turned to Reyes. When this ends, there won't be victors. Only witnesses. And that's all I ever wanted. He gave a small, tired smile. And what if they refuse? What if they choose defiance? Her eyes flicked to the map again. 1,000 Terran ships glowed faintly across the rim, each one a silent promise. Then they'll remember, she said, why humanity was never meant to be underestimated. Far above the buried city, beyond the planet's shrouded atmosphere, the Terran armadas drifted like shadows across the void. From a distance, they looked motionless, almost peaceful. But within their silence waited the momentum of a species that had learned how to turn invisibility into inevitability. Admiral Vale stood alone as the room emptied, the faint hum of the command systems filling the air. She placed her hand on the glass, tracing the path of the nearest fleet as it curved toward the galactic heart. Her reflection merged with the stars, her expression unreadable. They thought the dark between worlds was empty, she whispered. But that's where we were born. And with a single command, she ordered the next wave into motion. The council chamber was no longer a place of debate. It had become a battlefield of words, fear, and accusation. The air shimmered with holographic static as delegates shouted across languages, each voice translated and layered into chaotic overlap. The once orderly seats of the Galactic Concordium now echoed with distrust. High Chancellor's Reth sat at the center of the storm, his hands gripping the cold metal of the dais. His translator drones hovered silently beside him, recording everything for a record no one would ever read. Around him, panic reigned. The humans have infiltrated our relay grids, screamed the delegate from the Kelith Dominion, her crystalline armor fracturing the light. They are inside our systems, our commerce networks are failing. A deep, rumbling voice countered from the opposite tier. Nonsense. You accuse because your fleets failed. The Kelith were the first to negotiate with the Terrans, admit your betrayal. Betrayal, another voice snarled, this one from a serpentine species coiling tightly around its pedestal. You accuse her while your own colonies went dark first. Perhaps you gave the Terrans access to our beacons. Silence. Sreth roared. His voice, amplified by the resonance field, slammed through the noise like thunder. The delegates froze, a sea of eyes turning toward him. We are disintegrating faster than the threat requires. That is how they win. Not through strength, through our collapse. The silence that followed was jagged, heavy. Admiral Kurnis stood near the projection wall, her limbs drawn close, her mandibles twitching in agitation. Chancellor, if I may, she said, her tone clipped and precise. Our intelligence division has confirmed reports of internal interference. Several sectors are transmitting unauthorized data loops. The source is unknown, but the patterns match Terran encryption. The chamber erupted again, this time with dread instead of rage. Inside our systems. They've already reached the core. This is impossible. Zreth slammed his clawed hand on the control sphere. Enough. If they're within our systems, then we adapt. Cut all central communication. Each fleet, each world, functions independently until further notice. No signals, no relays, no access points. If the humans want silence, we'll give them silence. Kurnis hesitated. That will fracture our coordination completely. You're asking the Concordium to operate blind. We're already blind, Zreth said. I would rather go blind by choice than let them guide our hands while we pretend to see. Before she could respond, the chamber lights flickered. For a heartbeat, the entire room dimmed into near darkness. When the illumination returned, the central holomap had changed. Every council world, every fleet, every system, all overlaid by faint red static lines forming an intricate pattern. No one had activated the display. The pattern pulsed once, and then a voice filled the air. It was human, distorted but clear. Division breeds obedience. You taught us that when you denied us unity. We thank you for the lesson. The hologram vanished. The chamber plunged into silence once more. One delegate whispered, "They're watching us." Another muttered, "They're inside the council." Zreth rose slowly from his dais. His movements were measured, but his eyes betrayed the flicker of something rarely seen among his kind, uncertainty. "They want us to turn on each other," he said quietly. "They're not just attacking our fleets. They're dismantling belief." A low hum filled the room again, growing in pitch until a sharp crack of static silenced it. A new holographic image formed, not red, not distorted. A live feed. A face. Lyra Tran. Her presence silenced the entire chamber. She stood tall, calm, the faint insignia of the Terran vanguard glimmering on her shoulder. Behind her, nothing but black, a void without stars. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," she said, her tone even, patient. "I am Envoy Lyra Tran, speaking on behalf of the Terran Confederacy. You've asked who we are, what we want. You've asked why your worlds fall silent, why your fleets find nothing to fight. The answer is simple. You chose silence first. We learned from the best." No one moved. She continued. "We have not come to conquer. We have come to correct. Your council denied us recognition. You refused us a seat, a name, a voice. But you built your empire using our worlds, our borders, our data. You feared what you could not control, so you erased it. We are here to remind you that erasure is not absence." Kurnis leaned towards Zreth, whispering, "She's not broadcasting through our channels. She's overriding them. Direct signal insertion. Quantum phase alignment, untraceable." Tran's eyes shifted slightly, as if she'd heard the words. "You can't trace us because you built a galaxy that doesn't understand the dark. But we lived there. We thrived there. We built an empire in your blind spots. Every void you ignored became our foundation." The chamber remained frozen, every delegate holding their breath. Then her voice softened. "This is not vengeance. It's balance. We will not destroy you. But we will no longer let you decide who matters. The age of classification is over. The era of assumption ends now." Before anyone could respond, her image blinked out, leaving only the echo of her last words reverberating through the hall. A moment later, several delegates began shouting again, panic, accusations, disbelief, but the energy was different now. The fear had shape. It was real. Zreth looked to Kurnis. "She's right about one thing. We erased them. And now, they've erased our certainty. Kernus' eyes reflected the fading glow of the holograms. What will you do? What we must, he said. Before the Concordium tears itself apart. But even as he spoke, the holomap flickered again. Systems once blue, council-controlled, turned to gray. Neutral. Unclaimed. Every trace of the Concordium's authority wiped clean, as though humanity had rewritten the very record of the galaxy's ownership. The chamber's light dimmed once more, this time by design. Velith Prime's defensive barriers had just been activated across the planet. Zreth stared into the darkened air, the faint hum of the power grid vibrating through the floor. They've divided us without firing a single shot, Kernus whispered. Zreth nodded slowly. And they'll keep dividing until we remember what unity costs. Beyond the chamber walls, fleets scrambled in panic, worlds cut ties, and ancient alliances fractured under the pressure of invisible warfare. The galaxy's oldest power had turned inward, tearing at itself while the unseen hands of humanity guided every tremor. And somewhere in the void, unseen by any sensor, the Terran fleets waited in perfect silence. The transmission came without warning. No signal trace, no source, no detectable carrier wave. It simply was, as if the message had always been waiting inside the galaxy's communications lattice, dormant until now. Every display, from military consoles to civilian holoscreens, went black for 3 seconds. Then a faint hum spread through the air like the sound of a heartbeat. Lyra Tran appeared once again, her form sharp and calm against a backdrop of starlit darkness. She wore no insignia this time, no banner or crest. Only a dark uniform marked with a single thread of silver at the collar. Her expression was patient, but her eyes, cold, deliberate, cut through the stillness. Members of the Galactic Concordium, she said softly. You have spent weeks debating, accusing, and collapsing under your own certainty. I bring clarity. Every council world received the message at the same moment. On Velith Prime, the delegates froze in the middle of a heated argument. In the Mournvire Nebula, where the Concordium's 4th Fleet once patrolled, officers dropped to silence. Even the private networks of the Kelith Dominion were overridden. The humans had found every voice and spoke through them all. Lyra continued, your fleets vanish not because we destroy them, but because they surrender. Not to us, but to truth. They see what you refuse to see, that your order has grown hollow. You rule through assumption, not understanding. A murmur ran through the council chamber. High Chancellor Zreth leaned forward, his claws digging into the armrest. You speak of truth, he growled under his breath. What truth demands this chaos? As if in answer, Lyra's image shifted. The background behind her dissolved into a live feed, stars rotating around a black horizon, punctuated by thin streaks of light. Human ships, vast and quiet, hovered in formation around what appeared to be an enormous sphere of fractured stone and metal. This, Lyra said, is what we built while you watched yourselves. The image expanded, revealing entire orbital rings encircling the sphere. Small vessels darted between them, weaving patterns of light. It was not a planet, it was a construct, part fortress, part cradle. This world, she continued, was forged in the Ort voids, beyond the reach of your maps. It is where humanity rebuilt itself, beyond your classifications, beyond your pity. You called us primitive. You ignored our silence. That silence became our advantage. The chamber buzzed with shock. Some delegates whispered the name that spread through the translation field like a contagion. Erebus. The rumored shadow world, the place no probe had ever returned from. Lyra's tone softened, but her gaze sharpened. We did not seek this war. But your indifference forced it. Every denial, every dismissed envoy, every blockade around Sol was a lesson. You taught us how power hides behind bureaucracy, how unity can be turned into weaponry. We learned. We adapted. The hologram flickered as her image leaned closer. And now, we arrive. Zreth stood, his voice amplified through the chamber. "Envoy Tran," he said, steady but strained. "You claim to bring peace, yet you sow panic. You speak of equality, yet you strike from the dark. What do you want from us?" For a moment, she did not answer. Then the holographic projection shifted again, showing not the human fleets, but council territories. System after system marked in bright blue, with pulsing crimson lines spreading from their borders like veins. "We want what should have been offered freely," she said. "Recognition. Autonomy. The right to speak and to be heard. Humanity will no longer kneel for permission to exist among the stars. We are not your subjects, your experiment, or your threat. We are your equals." Kurnus muttered beside the Chancellor, "They could have asked." Lyra's eyes turned, as if she'd heard the thought across light years. "We did ask." You laughed. The air in the chamber grew heavy. Even the environmental drones paused midair, their lights dimming as the silence deepened. Lyra's voice lowered. "This is not conquest. You call it invasion because you cannot imagine anyone rising without your command. We are not invading. We are arriving." The word struck like an energy pulse. Delegates whispered the phrase over and over, unable to tell if it was a declaration or a warning. Zreth exhaled slowly. "And if we resist this arrival?" Lyra's face did not change. "Then you will face yourselves. We will not attack you. We will only remove your illusion of control. When the systems you built to dominate others no longer obey you, when your fleets drift without orders, when your laws echo through empty channels, you will understand what it means to live as we did." The hologram dimmed to half-light. "Your council must decide. Speak with us directly. One voice, all species present. No intermediaries, no layers of power. If you refuse, the Concordium will collapse before your next orbital cycle." Her gaze swept the chamber one last time. "Humanity extends this invitation with respect. We are not your enemy. But we will no longer be your silence." Then the feed cut. The lights returned slowly, leaving the chamber filled with a static hum and the scent of ozone. Delegates stared at each other, speechless. Kurnus turned to Zreth. "They're demanding full council contact. Direct diplomacy. That's unprecedented." "Yes," Zreth said, his tone hollow. "So is their existence in half our sectors." He stood, pacing toward the central dais. "Contact all remaining member fleets. Prepare emergency alignment protocols. We will speak to them." Kurnus hesitated. "If this is a trap, then it's already closed," he said. "The only way out is through." Outside the chamber, the skies above Velith Prime shimmered as the planet's defensive lattice recalibrated. But far beyond, in the void between systems, the human fleets waited motionless, their engines dark, their signal signatures perfectly silent. Inside one of those ships, Lyra watched the Council's reaction unfold in real time, data streams flashing across her display. She turned to the figure beside her, a tall man in plain uniform, eyes sharp with quiet pride. "Do you think they'll listen?" he asked. Lyra's expression barely shifted. "They'll have to. The moment they speak to us as equals, the galaxy changes forever." The man nodded. "And if they don't? Then we remind them," she said softly, "why silence always belonged to us." Outside, the stars turned black as the fleets aligned. The message had been sent. The galaxy could no longer pretend not to hear. The chamber of the High Council was silent, filled with the faint hum of suspended data streams. Only the pulse of holographic displays illuminated the room, casting pale blue reflections across alien faces drawn tight with unease. A low-frequency resonance passed through the air, the prelude to another human transmission. The image that formed was not Lyra Tran this time. It was a man, older, severe, dressed in an Earth military uniform so black it seemed to drink light. His eyes were steady, his voice measured with the precision of someone who had spoken before billions and never needed to repeat himself. I am Director Alone Reyes, Command Operations of the Terran Vanguard, he began. You demand explanation. You want to understand how humans crossed the void you thought impassable, how your fleets fell without a single direct assault. I will tell you. But you will not like the answer. A ripple passed through the delegates. Zreth narrowed his eyes, leaning forward. Kurniss stood near the display node, her gaze darting between spectral readings. Reyes gestured, and the hologram expanded into a galactic map, familiar, yet suddenly different. The Council's known systems glowed blue, but beneath them, an entire secondary lattice shimmered in faint gold, an invisible web running through what they believed were empty coordinates. For millennia, Reyes said, you've built your empires around the assumption that the galaxy is defined by light. That distance is a barrier, that energy decay makes the void unreachable. But you never considered what could exist beyond your sensors. We did. Because we had to. He waved his hand, and a dozen golden nodes flared to life. These are the quantum relay gates. We call them the null transit network. Invisible to your scanners because they operate between energy states, not within them. Where you bend space, we remove it. Where your ships burn fuel, ours bend vacuum itself. You spent centuries worshipping the speed of light. We learned how to live beneath it. Gasps filled the room. One delegate shouted, impossible. No organic civilization could. Reyes' gaze snapped toward the voice. No civilization that rests on arrogance could, he said quietly. Humanity didn't build this overnight. We learned by necessity, survival breeds innovation faster than luxury ever could. You ignored our wars, our hunger, our need to reach beyond soul. You thought our silence was weakness. But silence is the sound of construction. The hologram shifted again, images of Terran ships appearing from nothing, striking precise locations, vanishing before counterfire could arrive. Each of your lost sectors wasn't destroyed, he said. They were disconnected. We severed the lattice you thought eternal. Your communication grids are built on the assumption that every relay obeys a central core. That's your flaw. You built a web around your own throat. Kurniss' mandibles twitched in disbelief. You're saying, these gates of yours, they bypass gravitational interference entirely? They rewrite it, Reyes replied. We learned to seed counterwave harmonics through dark matter clusters. Space folds where we decide it should. And because your science dismisses what it cannot observe, you never saw us build it. The projection zoomed inward, showing a small Terran vessel entering what appeared to be a flickering distortion. Within seconds, it re-emerged light years away, completely undetected. You wonder how we appeared in systems beyond your reach, he said. We didn't arrive. We were already there. The words hit the chamber like a detonation. Delegates murmured, frightened, their translators struggling to keep up with the cacophony of disbelief. Reyes continued, calm and merciless. When your fleets searched for human colonies, they scanned for life signatures. But we no longer need planets. We live in the structure between stars. Our stations harvest vacuum energy. Our people move in flotillas that drift in dark gravity wells. You can't see us because you designed your instruments not to look into darkness. You called it empty. We called it home. Zreth rose to his full height, his voice shaking with restrained fury. And what now, Director? You flaunt your power, your hidden empire. You reveal your advantage to humiliate us. Why tell us any of this? Reyes' eyes hardened. Because you still think this is about war. It isn't. We have already won that. This is about comprehension. You needed to understand the scale of your blindness before you can speak to us as equals. Lyra Tran appeared beside him in the hologram now, silent but steady. Reyes turned slightly toward her. For centuries, your council has dictated which species are mature enough to govern themselves. You wrote the laws of existence, drew borders through the void. You built a hierarchy and crowned yourselves its gods. But gods should not be surprised when mortals stop believing. The lights in the chamber flickered once. Holographic projections of council fleets appeared, only this time, each vessel carried a mirrored image beside it. Identical. Controlled. Kurnis gasped. They've cloned our command networks. Reyes' tone didn't change. We copied your fleets. Every encryption key, every order relay, every ship-to-ship AI. What you believe is your navy is a reflection. The moment you issue a command, we hear it first. The moment you strike, we're already gone. You've been fighting your own ghosts. Zreth's claws dug into the console. Then why spare us at all? Why not destroy the council and claim the stars? Lyra finally spoke. Her voice was softer than Reyes, but it carried farther. Because conquest would make us what you are. We do not seek to rule. We seek to exist without your permission. Reyes nodded. You called us primitive. Unpredictable. Dangerous. You were right about one thing, we are dangerous. But not because we hate. Because we remember. He paused, letting the silence stretch until it filled every corner of the chamber. Your mistake was not in fearing us. Your mistake was in teaching us how to survive without you. The holograms blinked out, leaving the council surrounded by darkness once again. Only a faint golden afterimage remained on the central projection, a single phrase encoded in Terran Standard. You caged yourselves in light. We moved in shadow. The words pulsed once, then vanished, leaving the council staring into the empty air where their dominance used to live. Zreth exhaled, his chest rising and falling slowly. They've remade the galaxy, he said. And we never even saw the dawn. Kurnis whispered, almost to herself, if this is their dawn, Chancellor, then ours has already set. Outside, far beyond the council world, the Terran fleet drifted between folds of dark space, silent and unseen, waiting for the next signal, the one that would decide whether the galaxy would kneel or learn to stand. The war began without a declaration. No alarms, no warning strikes, no rallying speeches to the stars. It began with silence, the kind that devours certainty. Across dozens of sectors, council fleets found themselves cut off from command. Navigation systems refused to align, communication relays cycled endlessly through null signals, and targeting arrays showed phantom readings of their own ships reflected back at them. In the command nexus above Velith Prime, Admiral Kurnis watched in disbelief as the fleet display turned to chaos. Signal echoes across every channel, she barked. All frequencies mirrored. We're broadcasting our own encryption back at ourselves. Her second officer, a young Virian whose frilled crest trembled with fear, looked up. Admiral, the pattern, it's human code. They've infiltrated the lattice completely. She clenched her mandibles. Cut quantum comms. Full isolation protocol. We already did, the officer whispered. That's why it's still happening. On the other side of the galaxy, within the black walls of the human flagship Artemis, Admiral Cassandra Vale stood before a holographic projection of the same map. She watched the confusion unfold, her reflection flickering over thousands of red blips, each representing a paralyzed council fleet. Around her, officers moved in silence, their actions coordinated with eerie precision. Status, she asked. Phase net synchronized. All Concordium command chains looped into echo patterns, said Lieutenant Morrow. Their AI governors are locked in recursive verification. They can't tell which commands are real. Vale nodded slowly. Then it begins. She turned toward the forward viewport. The void beyond shimmered faintly with faint silver ripples, the edges of quantum gates breathing open like invisible lungs. Hundreds of human ships floated motionless, waiting. They could have attacked. They could have erased everything. Instead, Vale issued only one order. Hold position. Disable, not destroy. They will understand restraint faster than they will understand mercy. The first Council fleet to engage was the Drath Combine. Proud, furious, unwilling to be humiliated by what they called the primitive breed. Their dreadnoughts surged forward through subspace corridors, weapons hot, ready to burn. But as they entered the first human-controlled sector, their fire control systems inverted. Energy discharges bent backward, redirecting into their own shielding fields. Within seconds, their ships were immobilized, locked in an artificial stasis grid created by the Terran quantum relays. On the Council's central network, the entire engagement played in real time. Billions watched their invincible fleets hang motionless in the dark, surrounded by Terran vessels that didn't fire a single shot. They're capturing them, whispered a voice in the Council chamber. Not destroying, capturing. Admiral Kurnis slammed a clawed fist onto the console. Chancellor, if we don't strike now, we'll lose everything. Zreth's voice was cold. We've already lost command. We can strike only ourselves. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's central display shimmered again. A familiar face appeared, Cassandra Vale. She stood calm, her posture perfect, her eyes unyielding. Members of the Council, she said, her voice carrying through every translation channel. Humanity has no wish to annihilate you. Your fleets are intact. Your people are unharmed. But your systems, your weapons, your command, no longer belong to you. Release them. Kurnis shouted. You have no right to. Vale's gaze turned toward her, sharp as glass. We took nothing that wasn't already built on us. You've ruled through dominance for centuries. Consider this an audit. Zreth rose, his voice trembling between rage and awe. You could end us. Why don't you? Vale looked at him for a long moment. Because you've already ended yourselves. We just stopped you from spreading the ruin further. Behind her, the holographic display shifted, revealing hundreds of immobilized fleets. Vale's tone softened, but only slightly. We could have erased your data grids. Instead, we left your archives intact. We could have destroyed your stations. Instead, we restored their orbit. Humanity does not seek destruction. We seek balance. You called us reckless children. But children grow up. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lyra Tran stepped into frame beside Vale. Her expression was solemn, her voice almost gentle. The Terran Confederacy offers peace. Real peace. Not subjugation wrapped in treaties. Not compliance masquerading as unity. You can choose to stand with us, or continue pretending you still control the galaxy. Either way, the age of hierarchy is over. Kurnis hissed, lowering her gaze. You speak like conquerors. Lyra shook her head. No. Conquerors demand loyalty. We only demand recognition. Across the chamber, data feeds began to stabilize. Systems once red now turned neutral gray, signaling deactivation. Council defense networks were shutting themselves down, human AI constructs overriding their aggression with silence. The war was already over, though no one had yet said the words. Vale turned away from the feed, speaking quietly to her crew. Signal all fleets. Full stand down. Maintain position, minimal energy output. I want no more fear than necessary. Admiral. As the communication ended, Zreth slumped into his chair, his voice barely audible. She's showing mercy, he murmured. Why? Kurnis looked at the fading hologram. Because she can. Above Velith Prime, human ships held formation, suspended in stillness like a constellation that had always been there. No lights, no threats, no words. Just the quiet hum of presence. In the void, aboard the Artemis, Vale stood watching the Council planet spin below her. They'll come to the table now, said Lyra beside her. They'll come because they have no choice, Vale replied. Lyra's eyes lingered on the stars. Choice is the illusion they built their empire on. We'll offer them a real one. Vale nodded. Then it ends tomorrow. Let them gather. Let them see what they called primitive standing in their own chamber. The silence stretched, vast and heavy, until Vale whispered, "We didn't win a war today. We ended an era." And outside the viewport, thousands of human ships faded from sight, vanishing one by one into the folds of dark space, leaving only the echo of their shadow to remind the galaxy that humanity had never needed to be seen to be victorious. The council chamber had never been so quiet. The vast dome above Velith Prime, usually alive with banners of light and the hum of power, now sat dim and heavy. The galaxies projected across the ceiling were gone, replaced by a single floating sigil, Earth's insignia, a simple blue sphere encircled by silver lines. The delegates watched it in uneasy silence, the symbol of a world they once dismissed now hanging above them like judgment. At the center of the hall, High Chancellor Sreth stood motionless before the empty dais. His breath came slow and shallow. Around him, the other members of the Concordium whispered in low tones, afraid to raise their voices. Admiral Kurnus stood behind him, armor dulled from sleepless days, her claws tapping against the floor in restless rhythm. Then, the air shifted. A soundless pulse rippled through the chamber, bending light as if reality itself took a breath. When it cleared, she was there, Lyra Tran, standing at the center of the room, surrounded by faint distortion rings that faded into nothing. No guards, no entourage. Only her. Every security sensor confirmed the same thing, she hadn't been transported in. She had simply appeared. Sreth spoke first. "Envoy Tran," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "You stand within the heart of the Concordium. Uninvited." Lyra met his gaze. "You invited me the moment you surrendered control of your fleets. We're past permissions now, Chancellor." He stared at her for a long time, then gestured toward the delegates. "You've made your point. The galaxy trembles before your shadow. Why come here in person?" "To end it," she replied. The words drew a ripple of unease across the room. Kurnus took a step forward, her mandibles tightening. "End it? You mean to dismantle the council?" Lyra reached into the fold of her uniform and withdrew a single translucent sheet, a data crystal encoded with shifting lines of silver light. "No. I mean to redefine it." She placed the crystal on the dais. Instantly, it activated, projecting a series of human and council symbols intertwining into one shared seal. "This is the terms of equal accord. A new charter, written by both human and neutral systems. It recognizes humanity as a sovereign civilization, equal in vote, trade, and exploration. No hierarchy. No oversight. The Concordium will continue to exist, but not as a throne. As a forum." The room erupted into noise. Voices in every tone and language filled the chamber. "This is coercion. They dismantled our fleets and now demand our consent. You call this equality?" Lyra waited until the uproar reached its peak, then raised her hand. The sound stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Her voice carried through the silence, smooth and controlled. "Coercion," she repeated. "You misunderstand the nature of choice. We're giving you one. You can sign this accord and share the stars with us, or you can reject it, and watch the Concordium disintegrate. We've already withdrawn your authority from the outer sectors. The moment I leave this room, every neutral world will declare independence. Every silenced colony will speak again. The only thing holding this galaxy together now is the illusion that you still govern it." Kurnus took a step closer to Sreth. "She's not bluffing. Our border systems haven't reported in for days. They're either defecting or aligning with human contact points." Lyra turned her eyes toward her. "They're not defecting. They're choosing. The difference matters." Sreth studied her, his scaled hands tightening behind his back. You claim to offer peace, he said slowly, but this is conquest by any other name. Lyra's tone softened. Conquest seeks ownership. We seek acknowledgement. We could have taken everything, Chancellor. Instead, we're giving you a future that includes you. Don't mistake mercy for weakness. She stepped closer, her reflection glimmering in the marble floor beneath her. Sign the accord. Step into the age you tried to deny. Or watch it rise without you. For a moment, no one moved. The council members stared at one another, the weight of centuries pressing down on their silence. The air itself seemed to wait. Finally, Sreth approached the dais. His claws hovered above the data crystal, the glow reflecting across his worn face. You realize what this means, he murmured. The Concordium's authority will vanish. Our history, our supremacy, it ends here. Lyra tilted her head. It ends only if you refuse to evolve. Power built on arrogance cannot survive equality. But unity built on respect can. He looked at her, at the calm defiance in her eyes, the quiet certainty of a species that had fought its way out of the dark. For the first time, he saw not an enemy, not a rival, but a reflection of what his own kind had once been before comfort dulled their edge. He placed his claw on the crystal. The surface flared bright white, imprinting his signature into the accord. The chamber filled with a low hum as the new seal of the Galactic Concordium formed in the air above them, two circles intertwined, equal and unbroken. Silence followed. The kind that carried not fear, but inevitability. Kurniss lowered her gaze. It's done, she whispered. Lyra nodded once. Then the rebuilding begins. She turned toward the delegates. The council will reassemble in one rotation. Each species, each world, one representative, one voice. The galaxy will not be ruled. It will be shared. Without another word, she touched a small device on her wrist. Her form shimmered and dissolved into cascading particles of light, vanishing as suddenly as she had appeared. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air still glowed faintly with the new seal. Sreth exhaled, his voice low. She came here not to destroy us, but to make us witness the end of what we were. Kurniss turned toward him, her voice barely a whisper. And the beginning of what they've become. Far above Velith Prime, in the dark between the stars, the human fleet waited in stillness. No threats. No demands. Just presence, an unspoken reminder that history had changed course, and the galaxy's center of gravity had shifted forever. The age of dominance was over. The age of acknowledgement had begun. The chamber lights dimmed one by one, leaving only the twin sigils hovering above the dais, the interlocked emblems of the new accord. High Chancellor Sreth stood beneath them, staring at the place where Lyra Tran had vanished. Around him, the council delegates murmured uncertainly, some with awe, others with resentment, but none dared speak too loudly. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. A civilization's reign had ended not with war, but with a signature. Outside, through the transparent dome, the skies above Velith Prime shimmered with ships. Thousands of them, human vessels mingled with those of alien design, forming lines of silent order. There were no weapons drawn, no symbols of conquest. Only the quiet, measured hum of engines waiting for instruction. Sreth inhaled slowly. His voice was low, tired, but calm. For centuries, he said, we ruled by presuming our superiority was eternal. And yet, in the span of months, a species we once ignored has rewritten the order of the stars. He turned toward Admiral Kurniss, whose expression remained unreadable. What does that say about us? Kurniss's mandibles clicked softly. It says we stopped evolving, she replied. And they never did. He nodded once. Then perhaps they deserve this galaxy more than we ever did. The sound of approaching footsteps drew their attention. A young aide hurried forward, holding a transmission crystal. Chancellor, she said breathlessly, a message from Earth's fleet. They request open communication with the Concordium network. Direct link. Zreth hesitated only a moment. Approve it. The air shimmered, and a projection formed, Admiral Cassandra Vale, her uniform pristine, her expression calm, though the faint gleam of exhaustion hid behind her eyes. The council gasped softly. To see her directly, unmediated, was to face the architect of their undoing. High Chancellor, Vale began, her voice steady, on behalf of the United Systems of Earth, I confirm the signing of the Accord. Humanity will uphold the principles we proposed, sovereignty, cooperation, and defense through unity. We ask for no tribute, no subjugation. Only acknowledgement and collaboration. Zreth studied her closely. You dismantled the most powerful alliance in history, he said. You humbled us before our own fleets. Yet you speak of peace. Why? Vale paused, her gaze distant for a heartbeat. Because we remember what it was to be ignored, she said quietly. When the first human probes reached your borders, you dismissed them as noise. When our envoys came with open hands, you turned them away. We learned from that. We learned that respect isn't granted, it's claimed. But once claimed, it should be shared. We don't want an empire. We want a future worth surviving for. Her image flickered slightly as communication interference rippled through the chamber. Zreth leaned forward. And what of those who refuse this future? The old powers will not accept equality so easily. Vale's expression hardened. Then they'll face the same choice you did. We won't destroy them, we'll outlast them. Silence fell again. The kind that carried truth too vast to deny. Finally, Zreth inclined his head. Then the Concordium accepts. Not as ruler, not as victim, but as partner. May this new order hold where ours failed. Vale offered a faint smile. Then it begins. Farewell, Chancellor. The transmission faded, leaving the chamber bathed once more in quiet light. Kurniss stepped forward, watching the sigils above. She means it, she said softly. They won't dominate us. They'll change us. Zreth looked up at the intertwined emblems, his reflection caught in their glow. Perhaps that's the truest form of power, he murmured. To change without conquest. Outside the dome, the fleets began to move, not in aggression, but in harmony. Human vessels and alien cruisers aligning into new patrol routes, their lights weaving through the dark like constellations reborn. The galaxy itself seemed to breathe again. Far across the void, within the command ship Dauntless Horizon, Lyra Tran watched the data feed stabilize. Reports of newly allied systems flooded in, frontier worlds pledging to the Accord, silent colonies reawakening under shared banners. Humanity had not just survived the stars, they had reshaped them. Reyes stood beside her, arms folded. It worked, he said quietly. For now. Lyra nodded. For now is enough. The rest will follow. She turned toward the viewport, where Velith Prime glimmered like a distant jewel. They'll learn. Slowly. But they'll learn. He studied her face for a moment, then asked, was this ever about vengeance? She smiled faintly. No. It was about memory. We wanted them to remember who we were when they called us insignificant. Now they'll never forget. Vale's voice echoed through the comms. Prepare for departure. Set a course for Sol. Humanity comes home. Engines hummed to life, a deep, resonant pulse that rolled across the stars. As the fleet shifted, the light of the nearby suns caught their hulls, turning them into a cascade of silver fire. Behind them, the fractured galaxy began knitting itself into something new, something unrecognizable, yet hopeful. On Velith Prime, Zreth stepped onto the council balcony as the human ships vanished into slipspace. For the first time in his long life, he felt neither fear nor pride, only a quiet, humbled awe. The stars no longer belonged to the council, nor to any single species. They belonged to those willing to reach for them together. He turned to Kurnis. Do you think they'll lead us well? She watched the fading light trails. I think they already are. High above, the last of the human vessels winked out, leaving only the silence of space and the faint echo of their passing. In that silence, the galaxy seemed to exhale, not in defeat, but in recognition. The age of dominion had ended, and something vast, unpredictable, and extraordinary had begun. For the first time in recorded history, the council chamber's banners displayed a single message in the shared language of all species, a line encoded by human hands and translated across 1,000 tongues. We are not invaders. We are participants. And across the endless night, from the smallest moon to the grandest citadel, the stars themselves seemed to answer, in light, in silence, in unity, acknowledging the truth the galaxy had tried so long to deny: humanity had arrived, and they would not be forgotten.